but a man that has direct knowledge because he served 1 year in Iraq is Dr. Brad Wenstrup, Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District. And Dr. Brad Wenstrup, Congressman, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show. And Congressman, how are you?
I'm doing all right, but lamenting a lot of the actions that are taking place in the world. You know, when I was in Iraq, there were many days where I thought how people at home have no idea what's going on over here and what this is like. And I've been thinking about that a lot for what's going on in Afghanistan today, that people don't really fully understand what American people and those that supported us are going through right now. And it's a shame. You know, we made a deal with the Afghan people that supported us.
Yeah, and he said, let's go before the deal that we spent, I don't know, $2 trillion, 2,500 brave American lives. I guess a couple 100,000 Afghanis were killed in the 20-year process or more. So we have on one side of the fence, according to President Joe Biden on July 8th, a modern army, well-equipped, the Afghan army with Air Force, with armored vehicles, with tanks, with howitzers, all the money that can be spent to stand up 300,000. On the other side of the field are a bunch of guys wearing Arab garb with no Air Force, no Humvees. They have no tanks. They're poorly trained. Someone said they look like Frito Bandinos, and they simply walk into the nation's capital and sit down at the presidential desk. How's that possible?
This is a severe black eye on the United States of America. And what's even worse is the notion that they are collecting and taking over all of our armaments, our equipment, and everything else that we brought to the field. You know, President Bush, when we went in after 9/11, he said, "You're a terrorist, we're coming after you. And if you house terrorists, we're coming after you too." That's the Taliban. And now they are stronger than they were 20 years ago because of the way we exited. You know, this is a complete black eye. And going back to the, interpreters and those that serve with us, I supported 2 Iraqi interpreters. They're now highly contributing U.S. citizens. Good. 2 of them are physicians. I mean, it's incredible. Matter of fact, I got a text from one of them yesterday, and he said, it is very, very disheartening. The image of American morality is being tested and is not doing so well so far. And, you know, when you have a lack of morality and a lack of competence, things go wrong. And I think that that's what we're seeing. You know, the president said, there's never a good time to do this. And I don't want to leave it for the next president. Well, the next president isn't slated for another 3 years. So if there's never a good time to do it, at least you want to optimize how you do it. And, you know, we can go back to what happened to Vietnam, which, of course, we're getting a lot of comparisons. But, you know, the 1973 Paris Peace Accords were signed in January. We were out in March. It wasn't until January of 1975 that Saigon fell, because what we had asked for was a decent interval. And it's my understanding that what Trump had negotiated included a decent interval. And if they did not adhere to that decent interval, they were going to hear from the United States of America. So we had a presence of about 2,500 troops in Afghanistan until last week. And now we're adding 7,000. And all those 7,000 are creating the scenario to give the Taliban even more power, because we're taking everyone out that we possibly can.
Congressman, how's it possible that we're told the greatest military in the history of the world is there working with the Afghan generals, the majors, the colonels, and the infantrymen? Where actually, as I understand it, the U.S. military is shoulder to shoulder with the Afghan military, living with them, training them for like 20 years, and giving them the best equipment in the world. And why didn't they discern that this crew would drop their weapons, turn them over to the Taliban, and join the Taliban? And we've been there for 20 years, listening, watching, training, sleeping with, eating with the cowards who turned over our weapons to the terrorists. How's that possible?
Well, those are the questions that need to be answered, and with high accountability. This is a huge deal, a huge black eye in the United States of America, a huge failing from our military standpoint. So you ask the questions, well, what advice was given to the president before this exit? And what was the expectation? Is all this really an unintended consequence, or did you just say it's going to happen and we don't care? So what kind of advice was given to the president? What was the assessment from the intelligence community, from the analysts themselves? Because sometimes we've seen that the intelligence community puts out something that differs from what the analysts were saying, and we had whistleblowers do that down at CENTCOM when General Austin, now Secretary Austin, was in charge of CENTCOM. And how closely did the administration work with the Afghan government and the Afghan military? Because, at some point, the last group out needs the defense of those that are staying, that are from that country, that have boots on the ground. Did we plan for that? Was there any attempt to plan for that? Was there a plan for the defense for the final exit? Did we actually do anything to deter the Taliban during this entire process? Those are the questions we've got to ask. And sitting on the Intelligence Committee, I'm digging in now, and especially when we get back in a secure facility, we'll get even more answers than I'm getting right now as we work through the intelligence community.
I guess you can't fire the commander-in-chief, but the National Security Advisor, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Lloyd Austin, up and down the line, some heads have got to roll on this one. And I don't know what to say. This is not like Vietnam. It is 10,000 times worse than Vietnam. And you may be too young to recall what happened in 74, 75. But
I do.
At that point, we did not turn over to the Viet Cong and the NVA the best American equipment in the world. There were months that went by. We knew what was coming. We got out. But here, at the same moment, it's a horrible decision that Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden made to Bagram Air Force Base to evacuate the Air Force Base before all these other things had transpired. And he gave this great speech on July the 8th saying, well, we got 300,000 greatly trained Afghan soldiers with the best military equipment in the world. And if they can't do it now, they can't do it ever. Whatever it is, you take 4 or 5 months to get everybody out, and then you do what you're going to do. Whoever gave him the advice to empty out, the general in charge leaves, everyone's gone, and then try to get somebody out, who made that decision?
It's really unbelievable, and the president promised us that we weren't going to have a scene like Vietnam. But again, Vietnam was 2 years after we left, and that was the people in our embassy where we still had diplomatic relations. And this was just giving it all up right then and there, and that was extremely poorly planned. Obviously, I don't even know what the plan was, except to say we're leaving, and how much warning or support did you give to those remaining to be able to try and hold themselves down, or at least give them a fighting chance? But when you just leave, or if you just give 20 minutes notice and then suddenly you're gone, I can't expect much from them, even though the expectations were low to begin with.
And then also, the billions of dollars that went to rebuild and provide Norman Rockwell facilities in Afghanistan that have now been taken over by 7th century bandinos. It's incredible to think the money. We can't build the Brent Spence Bridge. How many bridges did we build in Afghanistan? I'm told there were dozens, maybe as many as 100 bridges we built in Afghanistan, and we can't build a bridge here. I look at the majors and the generals in the Afghan Army who had paper troops underneath them collecting all their monthly pay for years, and no one accounted for any of that. And right now, helicopter gunships are being operated by the Taliban. To me, it's mind-boggling.
It is, and the question is it just complete incompetence? Is it being naive? A good quote came from Ryan Crocker, who was the Obama administration's ambassador to Afghanistan, and he said the withdrawal, which was botched, was already an indelible stain on Biden's presidency. I mean, this whole process, we if you think about it, we've had 20 years to consider how we were going to withdraw our forces after the aftermath. 20 years. And, I can tell you, and I shared this with you, all the efforts that were being made in a bipartisan fashion from members of Congress that were questioning this. We formed a group going back to April where we called ourselves Honoring Our Promises Working Group. We sent letters, held calls with the administration officials, even passed legislation that would pave the way to give the administration all the tools it needed to evacuate the immigrant visa eligible people that had worked with us. We saw this coming. It was predictable. And we, like I said, in a bipartisan fashion, no less, we really were trying to work with them, and we were promised that they're going to do everything they can to make it happen. You know, it seems to me this is all about trying to have everybody out, not everything out, obviously, which is a huge loss, as we're talking about, but everybody out by the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Oh. And that seems to be more important than actually the lives that are involved here. And that's the thing. This is such a disrespect for human life, and especially for those that were seeking democracy. Maybe they weren't strong, that's fine, but at the same time, you totally disrespected their efforts in fighting a very evil and wicked Taliban.
This morning during the news conference in the Pentagon, there was like a 4-star general that looked like he was out of central casting. His first name is Hank, and there sat Admiral John, who was a spokesman. And some questions were asked like, let's assume you're 100 miles away from Kabul and you want to get to the airport. How do you get to the airport? Because you go through checkpoints of Taliban, and they know your name, address, your phone number, what the hell, we know who you are, and they know who's trying to go to the other side. He said those individuals may suffer dire consequences at the checkpoint. And then how do you get to when you can't get to the airport unless the Taliban wants you to get to the airport, and they know who you are, they know who your wife are, the kids, all that kind of stuff. And the other issue that's percolating is that in the next month or two, when we're completely out of there, there's not going to be like an AP wire operation going on. It's simply going to be the brutalization of the men, the beheading, the hands lopped off. The girls will be thrown into sex trafficking camps all over the world. The opium fields are going to restart again. And I'm thinking, how in the world did the greatest military power in the history of the world, if indeed that's the case, I have my doubts after watching this, could have permitted such things to transpire? And what do you say, Congressman, to the 2,500 wives and husbands, moms and dads, whose children, those brave soldiers, are not coming home? Why did they sacrifice, and why did they die?
You know, I've thought about that often, as you might imagine. I thought about that same situation with Iraq. And one of the things that could give a lot of people solace is when you see people that worked with us that put their lives on the line. Look, we lost interpreters. You know, they got killed right along with us. We lost them, and I'm sure they did in Afghanistan as well. And the one thing that you could take away when those people that served with us came to the United States, became U.S. citizens, you know, you can at least say, you know, we brought freedom to some people and their families. You know, certainly Iraq today is still a better place than it was under Saddam Hussein. That's not going to be the case in Afghanistan. And especially if we can't even get out the people that served with us who are probably anxious to become contributing U.S. citizens.
No, they're hugging onto the wings of planes falling off at 2,000 feet. Now, lastly, 7,000, according to the Pentagon this morning, 7,000 U.S. troops are going to go into Afghanistan to assist the turnover of power and to protect friendlies. So the purpose of our military is to turn over the government in Afghanistan to the Taliban. Is that correct? That's the purpose?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying.
Okay.
If you think about it, you know, we had 2,500 there, and things were relatively stable. Now it's unstable, and we're sending in 7,000 more because we were leaving. You can't make this up. And 7,000 more, what, are they going to be combatants? How does this play out? I really need to get in to see the military plan of what their role is supposed to be. But you're right, because all that 7,000 is there to do is to make sure the Taliban can continue to take over the rest of the country.
If I'm the North Koreans, if I'm the Communist Red Chinese, if I'm the Russians, I look at the performance of the American military. There's been some reporting out of Beijing that the Communist Chinese could not be more happy, and they've opened up relations, tried to with the Taliban, and there's nothing there. There's nothing. It's a 7th century country. Can you imagine the American military that exhibited itself in Afghanistan showing up to fight the Chinese Communist Army or the North Korean Army or the Russian Army? Can you imagine this group in charge of a serious war?
Well, I wouldn't blame the boots. I blame the suits.
Absolutely.
And that's the case. And, you know, it tells you everything. How come Russia's not leaving? How come China's not leaving? And so all of our equipment, everything else, essentially becomes theirs as well.
Because they just buy it. They buy the most advanced equipment in the world are now being trafficked to the communist Red Chinese and to the Russians. And the American military, our soldiers are now there to make sure the equipment lays in the hands of the communist Red Chinese. And they want to make sure the Taliban, that look like 7th century Frito Bandinos, take over a country and sit in the presidential palace. That's the role of our military. And we're supposed to accept this as just, well, it was unfortunate.
Yeah, it was way more than unfortunate. You know, the idea of leaving Afghanistan was not unacceptable to the American people.
No.
And the narrative the president is trying to exhibit is that this is what America wanted. No, we didn't want this embarrassment. No, we did not want it to happen this way, and it didn't have to.
Matter of policy, it happened specifically out of the White House, out of the Pentagon. The suits determined how to do it. They gave reports up the chain of command of what's going to happen. And, of course, Joe Biden is not mentally alert, so somebody around him had to make the decision, this is how to do it, pull out the military, and then rely upon the good judgment of the Taliban to get our friendlies out. And I couldn't imagine a worse military decision. And this is embarrassing for the United. We wanted out. I said at the time, 6 months. I think it was October, November of 2001, right after 9/11. We began. Within 6 months, the mission was accomplished. At that point, you come home. But no, we had to rebuild the nation of Afghanistan. Everyone says we're not in a nation building. That's exactly what we did for 20 years, to the tune of 2,500 lost lives, tens of thousands of mortally wounded, trillions of dollars. And at the end of the day, American soldiers are handing the keys over to the Taliban and our equipment over to the Russians. Dr. Brad Wenstrup,
Yep.
we got to go, and thank you once again for your service, and thank you for coming on the Bill Cunningham Show. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, let's
you have a
continue.
good day.
Thank you.